he had a pom-pom that he used to do force fields. They'd shine a light on photographs. And these fell off, and I was asking,
Oh, my goodness.
you can have it. I'll treasure it.
Look at that. That's fantastic. Welcome to another episode of Treknicity, a Star Trek podcast. Join us while we bounce the graviton particle beam off the main deflector dish. I'm Lars.
I'm Patrick. I didn't pull up anything because, well, you can see we're talking with somebody today.
Exactly. In this episode, we're taking a short break from the spoilerific reviews of the latest episode of whatever the Trek show is on, and we're pointing to Starbase 69 to talk to a very special guest. A man who needs no introduction in the inner sanctum of Star Trek joins us to rap about what it's like to be an artist in the Trek universe. Welcome, inimitable and all-around great dresser, Mr. Doug Drexler. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, hey, everybody. Going on,
like just looking like, I mean, seriously, looking at your rap sheet, it is absolutely it is a laundry list of some of the coolest things I've ever watched.
I don't know how it happened, and really, I think sometimes that, I must have died in a car accident when I was 15, bleeding out on the side of the road and having, you get all your dreams come true, right?
Yeah.
I lived an entire life. It's like that. It's like Inner Light.
Oh my goodness! So you're gonna wake up one day and realize, you're still 15 years old and your entire life is
It's
past.
a dream, or it's just crazy. I've been writing my memoir and getting my story straight, basically.
I guess it's a really good way to go back and kind of relive the memories of.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And some of the things I'm like, I can't believe that. And although I knew that there were lots of crazy things happening at the time they were happening, it isn't until you actually look back and put them all together that it really starts to take on crazy meaning.
Yeah, the thing is, looking back at where you started, I mean, looking back for professionally listed from your IMDb page, it looks like you kind of got started around the early 80s. You worked on a film called The Hunger, but that looked like it was just a...
that was my first job.
Yeah?
And thanks to Dick Smith. Every makeup artist dreams about working with Dick Smith.
Mm.
It just so happened that he was an East Coast guy.
Hmm.
And if he had been out west, there would have been lots of people he could have hired to come in and, help out. But in the New York area, there were only a handful, So when I had spoken to him the first time, a friend gave me his telephone number. He had done an interview with him. And I was scared to call him. And he kept me on the phone, giving me info and stuff like that. And 3 months later, I was on The Hunger.
Hmm.
That was a huge makeup job. It had everything in it. It had incredible old age prosthetics on David Bowie, and puppet heads, and full figure mummies that had to crumble at the end. And it was just, and I was on that for like 6 months, and that was the beginning of my career. That started me off.
Did you find that, after you'd done that, you pardon the pun, that you hungered for more?
Well, I was obsessed by makeup. There's no doubt about that. I mean, after I did my first makeup, because I got invited to a Halloween party, and I did it at Planet of the Apes, just like everyone did, my age. And once you've done that, and you see how amazing it is, even in person, that I just lost it after that. It was all, I couldn't stop, sculpting and making molds. I'd make molds on a soup can, just to make a mold. And also, being able to, not just creating a creature, but being able to actually produce something, to make a mold, to make foam latex pieces. So it's like just this big creative party, So I just went nuts after that, and I was sending Dick some stuff that I'd done, and that's how I ended up working there. I did get to the point where I was pretty much done with makeup, which was about 12 years or something. I really wanted to move on into something else, and there were so many other fun things happening. the whole world is a makeup. I don't even know how people can be a makeup artist for 40 years. To me, that like boggles my mind. But you know, after Dick Tracy, I went right over to Next Generation. You know, with Mike Westmore, who was
looking at looking. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Just looking at just looking at the level of what you accomplished, both on the silver screen and the small screen, it's amazing to see. Like we talk about being artists and whatnot. You know, it's hard for me to explain to people how the process works. You know, inspiration comes from anything, good and bad. Sometimes you find that you have a very good experience or a very good memory, and it inspires you to do something, or you know, alternatively, you have something bad happen to you, and it can just as equally inspire you to come up with the ideas and to develop something that becomes iconic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that as an artist, that's your job, is to learn how to take anything, because you're not going to just have good days, you know. To learn how to use everything. I mean, my loss of Dorothy was inspired a lot of writing, which is part of my memoir, and I think I wrote some of my most passionate stuff there, not just about spaceships and things like that. So yeah, I mean, you never know where the inspiration is going to come from, and if you're actually doing it for a living, you can't wait for inspiration to strike you. You know, you've got to find that inspiration. That's the hard part, and I don't think most people can do that. You know, like there's a lot of talented artists on the internet doing starships and things like that, some really beautiful stuff, but can they do it in a week? You know, and they might want to see 4 or 5 ideas in it, you know, that tomorrow. You know, so that's what really makes it. It's hard. I know it looks like fun, and it is fun, but it's also moments of great fun and fulfillment, and moments of abject terror.
Yeah.
And then hours of doing stuff in between.
Well, you know, it's like the schedules can be crazy sometimes, and there's times when you're not giving them what they want, you know, and that's especially like if you're doing makeup effects. In the old days, we used to do bullet hits with prosthetics and charges.
Oh yeah.
Fun of blood squibs.
They don't go off. Now the company's standing around, and it's costing them tens of thousands of dollars while you're trying to make it work. That's pretty scary, you know. And sometimes you're doing that, and you haven't slept in 48 hours. So, you know, makeup, you're the first ones there and the last ones to leave. It's really hard work. Visual effects as well. I found art department to be most civilized of all the departments I've been in, you know. Yeah. There is a certain amount of performance involved with coming up with the designs, but it's not like you have to be there in front of the whole crew and make it work like, you know, performance art. That's what makeup is. Makeup is performance art.
Just off camera mostly. Getting it set up off. Yeah.
Yeah. If you see the makeup artist in an episode of Star Trek, it wasn't me.
I do recall you making a cameo in an episode of Star Trek Continues. I want to say as the gunslinger.
Well, I made a cameo on Next Generation.
I do, and I remember that. I actually
we saw the makeup artist.
I didn't see the makeup artist on screen, but
still better than Code of Honor.
Yeah,
he was in uniform like Jack Crusher.
I want to know. I want to know how uncomfortable those zip up front uniforms were in the first and second.
You know, I hear all kinds of stories about how uncomfortable they are, and how that. I mean, someone told me that is it true that they really stunk? No. You know, where'd you hear that? I didn't find it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, I only had to wear it for, you know, a long day, but I don't remember being. I think the most difficult thing was going to the bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
You had to unzip it and then put it down around your knees, tie it up so it's not on the bathroom floor.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Well, you know,
it was the hardest part, but the rest was great. I loved wearing it. It was amazing to wear it. It was a thrill, a huge thrill.
You know, I guess
an outfit you want to drink a lot in.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you could tell, how much change you got in your pocket in those, the ones that I was wearing. That's what Bill Tice was still doing them, and they were all
Yeah.
stretchy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
form-fitting. Bob Blackman made those, and actually probably much more believable. The cloth, soft looking, with some. They have shape, but they're not sprayed on you.
Yeah. They're not. I mean, they're really not form fitting. I mean, there. I guess there was a dichotomy between the form fitting Starfleet uniforms and like the '80s shoulder pad versions of the Romulan uniforms. Just like at one point you could look at somebody who was a Starfleet officer and go, wow, there doesn't leave much to the imagination. But you look at the Romulans and you're like, you're going to take an eye out with one of those shoulders.
Well, everybody had shoulder pads on the Enterprise D, pretty much. Michael Dorn's physique was built into his uniform.
Oh yeah, I think I remember reading about that.
Oh, look at Seven of Nine's catsuit. That is a masterpiece of architectural construction by Bob Blackman.
Yes, we all looked at Seven of Nine's catsuit.
Well,
that was the point.
Well, anyway, even without the help, but he pushed her over the top with incredible, engineering of that outfit. It wasn't. I know it looks like it was form fitting to her, but it wasn't. It was built out all over the place, to make her.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
chef's
also,
kiss.
you got to remember the thing about the sprayed-on tight uniforms on the men and the women is that, people would say to Gene, "Are you going to stop using women as sex objects on the show?" And he said, "No, but I'm also going to continue using men as sex objects on the show."
Yeah,
that sounds like Gene.
Yeah. I mean, the man was obsessed with sexuality. I mean, I'm sure there's.
What sells? What sells more than that?
Yeah,
and apparently
absolutely.
alien sex organs too, but that's
alien
just some stuff.
On breasts.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just you've worked in everything from like TNG through DS9, and then into Enterprise, and then of course now you're working on Picard, and the
Galactica.
Did you find like what I'm trying to go at is are you finding the transition from more of the makeup to the concept art and visual effects to be more to your liking these days?
Oh yeah. I would never do makeup again. Oh my God. Well, it depends. How much money will you pay me? I'll do it for multi-million-dollars, sure. But no, I don't want to do makeup. I had all the makeup I, could stand. It was, it was an amazing, ride for me. I loved doing it. And I had a partner, John Caglione, who I adore. We had the best time. And we laughed all the time, and crazy things happened to us. But before I was doing makeup, I was sketching and drawing and designing spaceships as a kid, stuff like that. Being a makeup artist, you live on the stage, so I spent so many hours on the Enterprise D. Late nights, early morning, days on. I mean, and you're living with the actors as well. But I had a lot of, hurry up and wait sometimes while they were setting up shots, and to really be on those sets. And really, I always loved what Mike Okuda did. When I saw, when the show premiered and I saw his LCAR stuff, I thought it looked amazing. And then to get there and actually have the time to put my nose right up against the plexi, and those engineering with those long displays that are flow charts, and when you could stand and look at those things and say, wow, this guy really took this seriously. He wasn't cheating it like. I mean, if you could there are lots of terrific graphic designers out here. But if you get someone who doesn't understand science fiction or Star Trek or tech at all, it's just not going to have the same, realism. And not everybody can do it. But so I remember, in that little Geordie's office there in front of the warp core, if you could actually slip between two walls and you can see behind what the audience sees. And the first time I looked at it, it was like a big wheel going, turning with the polar motion on it, And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh. There was one time, I think it was during one of the movies, they turned on all the engineering graphics, and the warp core was running backwards. It's going backwards. And they were getting ready to shoot, and I couldn't get in there. And I climbed up over the top of the sets, across the permanents, came down a ladder behind the wall, flipped the switch to get the warp core running in the right direction.
That's practical effects,
this is
isn't
my
it?
life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that kind of defines the term practical effects.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like Kirk in Generations running down to flip that switch to save the ship.
Yeah.
I did it too.
Going from what you saw on TNG to what you see now on Picard, obviously Michael Okuda's LCARs have evolved way above what it used to be. I mean, I guess, I'm not gonna lie. I was very critical of the first two seasons of Picard, not from a visual standpoint, but mostly from a storytelling standpoint, because I felt like we were just going through the motions, and we were just, we were building towards something. But eventually, I think when you guys stepped in, you came in on season 3, and they really took a different approach.
We came in on season 2, and I was involved with the Stargazer, and getting ready for season 3, and things were getting better in season 2. The thing was that Terry Metalis was not yet in a position where he was really in full charge. There were other people involved there who came from Discovery, and they did the best job they knew how to do. But the thing is that Terry is a geek, is a Star Trek geek. And so I could see why Patrick did Picard, because. And I would say that was because it was nothing like Next Generation. That would be attractive to him. I want to see Jean-Luc Picard. I want to see Jean-Luc from the ground level, And I get it. I understand why he wanted to do that. It gave him the opportunity to be that character. Now, season 2 started off with a bang, I thought. And then they went back to L.A. in the 21st century. I'm like, ah!
What are you doing?
Why?
Why are you here?
Right. Start off with a bang with Stargazer. Fans went crazy over the new Stargazer. Well, why? Because for 20 years now, they haven't seen ships that tasted like Starfleet.
Absolutely.
If you don't understand it, you're not going to be able to put it into the ship, And guys like me and Mike and, we know you could look at the ship and go, oh, that's a phaser strip. That's a, warp core, egress. That's it. And and the paneling all looks. You can see the thread that runs through everything to all of your favorite ships. The same technology, it's all there. That is a lot of Star Trek people dig the ships. I dig the ships. They love the stories too. But there's something so wonderful about a Federation starship going all the way back to 1966, and it's because. And I've told the story a few times now that Matt Jeffries, he had a hangar out west of here, and Mike and Denise and I would go out and hang out with Matt in his hangar, hang in the hangar, and he coined a phrase that I used to describe. There's different ways you could design spaceships for shows like this. You could do a science fiction design, or you could do an aircraft logic design. Aircraft logic, Star Trek, right? The other thing is just a science fiction design. It doesn't actually have to make sense. It just has to look cool. Yeah,
it doesn't have to be practical. You don't actually have to be able to demonstrate how this thing would actually travel. It just has to look cool.
The fans love looking at the ship, knowing what everything is. It's all in the right place. And then the next thing they do is start to take it apart.
Yes.
And they want to be able to look at it and say, if I pull these panels off here, I have a pretty good idea what's under here. Mike's graphics did the same thing for the show. You looked at those graphics, and it was no longer just a set. The graphics convinced you that there was this amazing organization behind the ship that made it work. And I've also said this before, I defy anyone to draw me up 5 examples of science fiction interfaces over the last 100 years. And I defy you. I'll tell you what, how about 3? Do 3 for me. No, can't do 3. How about 2? No? 1? Yeah. Almost everyone knows what an LCARS interface looks like. And it's easy for almost anyone to sketch it out, even if they can't draw.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't care whether it was 2001, A Space Odyssey, or it doesn't, you can't. Star Wars, there's no identifiable fingerprint that speaks as loudly as the design of the ship itself, which that design has lasted since 1964, still looks amazing, and has been spun off 10,000 ways, maybe more than that. It's mind-boggling. It's such a, and Matt was just the most unassuming guy. He was not a geek. He was a flight engineer on a B-17 during World War II, which is one of the reasons why he got along so well with Roddenberry, because Gene was a pilot of a B-17 during World War II. Gene was in the Pacific. Matt, I think he probably flew out of Italy or something like that, against, bombing runs against Rommel. Amazing stories, and it shows in the stuff that they do. When you get people who don't really either understand the DNA of Star Trek or even science fiction, you're going to get, it's like when I went to Orville, there was circuitry on the ship that didn't look anything like circuitry, They did a lot of circular things, and I'm saying to Robin, I'm going, look, these don't go anywhere. Circuits go places.
Right.
You have to feel like you could trace them somewhere. That's because they had a wonderful graphic designer, but not really someone who, lived by this stuff. Mike, we live this stuff, it's like part of our being,
That was a question I had for you, is that, and I mean, I have, over the years, kind of tapped into the artistic side of myself that I've always wanted to explore through either graphics or photography or video editing or filmmaking. And one thing that has become abundantly clear to me is that I cannot be trusted to just create something and put it out there without some sort of input, because what happens if I come up with something, I come up with a design, I make for the design for the Treknicity logo, our design is the Starfleet Delta in the three primary colors of blue, yellow, and then red, and then I negatively spaced the Vulcan salute through the middle of the design. And initially I was like, I like this. I really love this. I'm thinking this is great. I'm just going to drop it right now. But it took a moment to kind of get some input about it, because I knew, I felt that. I felt immediately there was this instant recognition, this feels organic to me. This feels right. But I've got to get it out there and get some feedback, because otherwise I'm just gonna I'm gonna put it out there and then think about it again.
If you're on a job, you're going to have to take feedback from directors, producers, and the production designer and the art director, and that's part of the job. But if I'm doing something for me, I don't want feedback. Don't want it. I just want to do what I think is right. I spend so much of my time working doing what I think is right for somebody else, and then they give me their feedback. And although I have to say were often times where I had to change something that I wasn't happy about, and then looking back, I said, that made it better. I didn't realize at the time, but you could get so snowblind while creating things. Yeah. And I also have to say, though, as much as I say I don't want feedback, if I'm stuck, if someone like Herman Zimmerman comes up and gives me some feedback, he might break the deadlock in my head. I might be obsessing over something that there's no time to obsess over. And sometimes that just a push from Mike Okuda or Gary Hutzel can help me break that, I'm stuck in the creative mud there,
Do you normally find that you do, like, really, like as you said, you don't really want the feedback. You want to do it, and you want them to tell you that it's what they wanted. But you have to accept that there's a balance between, what you think is right for the situation and what they envisioned in trying to find that happy middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to hope that what you come up with, it's like it's hard. It can be really hard work sometimes, and sometimes you'll get. Producers who just don't have a clue what they want, and they go, I don't know what it looks like, but I'll know it when I see it. So just keep doing more and more and more, and they will, like if it's a hero ship of a show, they might have you doing designs right up until the drop dead point, where you'll just finish it in time. And usually they still don't make a decision, and now you've got this crushing, you're having to make up for time to get something done. It's like I said, every show and every producer, it's a different ecosystem. You just never know what it's going to be like, and that's part of your job is being, flexible and being able to being a part, psychologist. And I had to talk to Herman Zimmerman. I had said that one of the things I learned, because it's like almost 43 years for me now, one of the things that I learned pretty quick was you have to learn to make them think they thought of it. If they think they thought of it, they love it. So, and there are ways to do that, but you have to be really it's tricky, and that's the I mean, you could plant a thought in somebody's mind, and then when you bring it up later, going, hey, how about you go, yeah, that's great. It came from you.
And then you're free to do what you want.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm not in it to prove I'm a genius or anything. All I want to do is make the boss happy. I want to be happy too. You succeed differently on every job. Whether you come away from it really proud of what happened, but there's no guarantees, and that's part of the crazy fun of it, because it can get so out of control. The reactor can overload, and it zips into a million different directions, and I don't know. I'm blathering now. Let's move it on.
Oh, no worries. I was looking, like, one of the things as in preparation for this interview, a couple, like the areas I wanted to touch on were, like when you're doing the designs, is it easier for you to work off an established, sort of established pre-design like you had with, like, say, Battlestar Galactica? Or was it more enjoyable for you to do something, taking some inspiration for something and then building your own thing? I mean, as we talked prior to rolling, you had, you got the beautiful shot of the Duderstadt behind you of the USS Intrepid. Do you find more that you like say, taking something that's already been there and kind of building off of it?
Well, I mean, first I have to say that the basic geometry of that ship came from Bill Krause. I think he had done a physical model. The thing is that almost most of the ships, featured ships on Picard, my job was, the way it would work is sometimes, see, that's the beauty of what's happening right now. It's kind of like when Michael Piller ran the writing room at Next Generation. He had an open door policy. Stories that came from fans, and I think Ron Moore.
Oh, yeah, Ronald D. Moore, amazing work.
Yeah, so we, believe it or not, even on a big expensive show like Picard, we didn't have as much time as we did when, say, we were doing Enterprise. Things had to move even faster. Now we have the internet with like thousands of people doing starships. And Terry, flipping through the internet, came across a couple of designs and said, I really would like to do a spin on, like Titan was a spin on a Bill Krause design, and Intrepid was a spin on a Bill Krause design. So ordinarily what we do is on Picard, we were having mostly Zoom meetings. I mean, it was in the thick of COVID. And, uh, you know, Dave Blass, John Eves, me, sometimes the guys from Star Trek Online would join us, and we would just talk about it. Then sometimes John might go and do a few sketches. And then basically when we've had this big, meeting, then I would take all of that and start building it out in 3D. And it just so happened that I just learned how to use a program because of COVID. I was just an okay modeler, and I was using Modeler. I never really got thick into it because by the time I was working with, say, Gary Hutzel, we would just hire someone who all they do is model, like Pierre Drolet or something like that. So there's no need for me to develop my skill. If I could just block something out, that would be enough. And then someone like Pierre could take it and finish it off, or he could just do the whole design himself. So when when COVID hit, I'm like, I picked up this program called Modo, and I said, I'm gonna learn this program, but I'm not building any spaceships. I'm not building any starships. I'm building automobiles. Like build a Lamborghini. Because I figured that if you can build that, there's nothing that's going to challenge you when it comes to a starship. So I spent like a couple of months just doing automobiles and got really good at it. And then in the meantime, I'd been talking to a guy named Dave Blass on my Facebook Messenger. I had no idea he was going to be the production designer on Picard. I just thought he was a fellow geek. He sent me a picture of himself in a Starfleet uniform from the movie era,
Nice.
And then when he told me, I was like, what? And that was like his, basically he is a big fan, big Star Trek fan, understands the aesthetic and everything. And so, he ended up asking, me and Mike to come onto the show, which never would have happened without Dave Blass and Terry Metalis, because the other shows, especially when they first started the JJ era, they frowned upon people who had a lot of Star Trek experience because they didn't want anyone who was going to tell them something. But that's not the way it is, because they wanted to put their own spin on it. And I totally get that. You have an opportunity to spend a lot of money and do the show. And if you're J.J. Abrams, you're pretty sure of yourself. Studio's pretty sure of you. And they're going to say, well, you do what you think is right. And J.J.'s not really a Star Trek kid. He's a Star Wars kid. He even says it.
And it shows.
There's no bones about it. I don't know if you saw him on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart when the first movie was coming out. And Jon Stewart's like listening, rapt attention, and J.J. Abrams is saying, I never really was a Star Trek fan, and I hated it when they got all philosophical and stuff. And that, to me, that's like, ugh, because that's what I love about the show. And I just remember Jon Stewart says, I think when you said you weren't a Star Trek fan, I didn't hear you anymore. It just became like, wah, wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah. Yeah, the Peanuts teacher.
Yeah, classic. But anyway, so we ended up on the show, and basically Terry was the lead guy this time. And he understood he understood Star Trek, and he also felt that not having us was, not having LCARs on the, come on, why would you not use that, you listen to what Terry did on Picard, and so many sound effects on the bridge are all from TNG.
Yeah, I notice, I hear them. I'm like, I think that's what has been so prolific for fans like me, is that it is just triggering all of these wonderful memories.
Yeah, you better believe it. Not only does it do that, which he's masterfully done with the score.
Yes.
Usually you go to another show and they just burn everything except da-da, and after that everything's brand new. You've got all of these amazing scores from the last 40 plus years that fans have thrilled to in movies they watched over and over. You become to anticipate a fanfare as Enterprise comes around the Earth and there's a big sun flare behind it in the motion picture. And moments in, the Mutara Nebula, and you use those in the right place, and everyone who's watching for all these years gets a thrill. It's a sense memory, and it's the same with the sound effects on the bridge. But not only that, most people, even subliminally, know what certain sounds mean. You know that sound when they input something and it doesn't take it, and you know just from the sound whether something's behaving or not behaving, that was carefully thought. I'm sure Bob Justman had a big hand in that in the first year or two of Next Generation, because he loved music and he loved sound effects.
That was something I noticed in the last episode before we recorded this, which was episode 5 of Picard, season 3, is they had that the original series bridge noise just as he come in, and it was immediate. It was like, I knew this without...
Yeah.
I didn't have to think. And then they cut into their normal sound, but that's still there, and it's just hovering. And this is on a ship that's a century beyond where that sound would have been.
Well, I mean, there are sounds that I hear every day that, are not new sounds, but we still use them. But I mean, the thing is, we're doing a TV show, really. We're not, it's more about people getting that sense memory ping.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there was a period a few years ago where I kind of got embroiled with. I'm not sure how familiar, or if you're familiar at all with it, but we refer to it as the Axanar debacle, and there was it divided fans very badly, especially like it went through a real rough patch. I got out of Star Trek. I didn't want to be a part of it. I didn't want to be anything to know about it at all. What I had loved about Star Trek was burning to the ground, and I thought I kind of got a little bit excited when the area that the Kurtzman era they now dub as New Trek starts to come along, and you got Discovery, and then I saw. To be fair, I saw something that I just felt was like, again, it felt like J.J. Abrams had taken the helm and lit a match to it, and I was watching things that I didn't like happen over and over again.
Not because he's a bad guy, and it's not because he's mean or that he wants to torture Star Trek fans. See, he's hired to do what he thinks is right. And that's what he's doing for the studio, and that's, you can't fault him for that. It's not his choosing JJ was a mistake, because JJ doesn't have, that DNA. He did the best JJ Abrams that he knew how to do. I cannot fault him. You need somebody at the top who is hiring the next director to have the DNA, and choose someone. Look, when I talk to someone who knows Star Trek, I don't need an introduction. We start talking right away, like we've known each other for years. You need to bring somebody in who, now, just by accident, Terry Matalas got himself to the point where he could be a showrunner when he was an assistant when we run Enterprise and Voyager. Got himself he used to hang out in the art department because he was a big geek. Then he got himself into a position where he's the showrunner of the show. And that means that he wants to recreate that fingerprint, the same aroma. So, listen, a lot of these shows that they have on, I don't consider to be on the same, it's a multiverse. Discovery is not the same universe as Next Generation. It's a different universe. And when I look at it that way, I'm okay with it. But Picard is actually the same universe as TNG.
Yeah, and I don't think I've gotten to the point now where I don't think that I have to have that explicit, everything has to fit into this puzzle of one big, production, and everything has to fit together. I've gotten past that point, which is great.
Well, I really haven't, but I think that as long as I tell myself that, see, when they were saying it was the Prime Universe, that was offensive. That really bothered me. Why are you throwing bombs,
Yeah.
And once it became clear that it's not the same universe, that it's another universe where you're free to put whatever spin you want on it, because after all, you are doing science fiction, which is meant to be stretched in every conceivable direction. So what's the problem? I don't have a problem with that. I'm really happy to see a Star Trek that connects back to the Star Treks that I really love. Those shows have a lot of fans, but there is an audience of people who watched from the 60s all the way up to 2000 who were not being served. So if you could serve that group, that's really nice. I haven't looked forward to a Star Trek like this in a long, long time. I found every episode touched my heart, maybe even brought up a tear or two. Funny, imaginative, characters I love that have brought their A game to it. It's a thrill, and actually, there's more thrills ahead.
Yeah, that was my last question for you for this interview, is that while I understand you cannot give us spoilers, we completely appreciate that, and we don't want to really anyways.
I don't want to get fired even though I'm not on a job.
Fair enough. But at the same time, I do want to ask you, do you feel that the last half of this season of Picard is going to pay off the way that the fans are looking for it to pay off?
I can't say anything about that.
Okay, fair enough.
The secretary disavows any knowledge.
Well, I appreciate very much you're taking the time to talk to us about all this. I could, as you know, we do these interviews, and I find that we talk to a number of Star Trek alumni. I can talk until the cows come home, but at some point, every good thing has to come to an end. And I would like to again thank you very much for coming on to the show with us and
pleasure.
talking to us.
It's always a pleasure to First, it's my favorite. I can't deny it's It's my favorite subject. So it's so easy to talk about, and actually I've got a lot of crazy stories. I mean, I put about 23 years into Star Trek.
That's no small potatoes. I mean, that's
amazing.
I've found that whatever I've done for more than a few years, it becomes imprinted on me to the point where it influences a lot of what I do after that point, even if it's in a different direction.
Oh, of course. Everything informs the next thing.
Well, that's all the time we got for this episode of Treknicity. Thank you again, Doug, for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure. Please be sure to check us out on all of our wonderful socials listed down below, and also visit us on our YouTube channel at redshirtgeeks.tv, where you can look at all the last 9 years of content. I can't believe I'm saying it again. 9 years. And you're like, oh yeah, 9 years. Yeah, come and talk to me when you did 20. I'm Lars.
I'm Patrick.
And we will see you next time. And also remember to go boldly and to rock out with your Spock out. We'll see you next time.